The next clause that we're going to discuss is the necessary and proper clause, which is also known as the elastic clause. This clause is stated in Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, and it says, "The Congress shall have power to make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying into execution the foregoing powers, and all other powers vested in this Constitution in the government of the United States, or in any department or officer thereof." So this clause gives Congress the power to do whatever is necessary and proper to carry out the functions that Congress is supposed to do. In other words, the Constitution explicitly gives Congress the power to coin money and regulate interstate commerce, for example. But it doesn't actually say that Congress has the power to make it illegal to counterfeit money. But if we're reasonable, we can all understand that Congress's ability, its power to coin money and to regulate trade, requires them to be able to actually control the supply of money. So it's necessary and proper for Congress to also make laws that say you can't counterfeit this money. This is also called the elastic clause because it allows Congress to stretch its powers beyond what is specifically stated in the Constitution. And boy, has it stretched its powers over time. The first Supreme Court case about the necessary and proper clause was the case of McCulloch v. Maryland, which happened in 1819. The Congress had created a national bank and opened a branch in Maryland, and then Maryland decided they're going to tax this bank. But the U.S. government argued the state of Maryland had no power to tax the federal government because of the supremacy clause. Maryland, on the other hand, argued that the national government had no legitimate power to even create a national bank. So the Supreme Court had to decide two things. First, can Congress create a national bank? And if so, can Maryland tax that bank? In the end, the Supreme Court ruled that creating a national bank was a legitimate act because of the necessary and proper clause, and because the Constitution gave Congress the power to regulate the national economy. So it was an explicit order, power that they could regulate the national economy, necessary and proper to create a bank. Then the Supreme Court, on the second part, ruled that Maryland could not tax the bank because the supremacy clause gave the higher power to the U.S. government, and the lower power, the state, can't tax or penalize the higher power, the government, the national government. Well, this all ties into a couple important vocabulary terms that you need to know: enumerated powers and implied powers. Enumerated powers are those the Constitution specifically gives to the national government. Think of the word enumerated being like numerated or numbered or listed. These are powers specifically listed, like a numbered list in the Constitution. The implied powers, on the other hand, are those that are not enumerated. They are not specifically listed, but they are implied through the necessary and proper clause. For example, the Constitution gives Congress the power to form a military and to declare war. But it doesn't say anything about creating a national draft where young men can be legally forced to serve in the military. But the Supreme Court has ruled the power to draft men in the military is an implied power of the enumerated power to form a military and declare war. In other words, the Supreme Court has decided creating a draft is necessary and proper to the enumerated powers of war. So now you know a little bit about the necessary and proper clause, and you know the difference between enumerated powers and implied powers.